our reporting today, we reveal that right up until the last minute, the defendant's barrister, David Sherborne, was trying to persuade Associated to settle for up to £5 million and avoid going to court. But Associated were just taking the view, look, there's no evidence here. We're not going to do that. Why should we pay you any compensation? See you in court.
One of the other big stories, huge spread in the Sunday Times this morning, is about the case against Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday's owner, Associated newspaper. It was brought by a group of people, including Elton John, led by Prince Harry. The news coming out on Tuesday that they have lost their case. And this, of course, is a case that has been ongoing for many, many years. Here to talk us through it all and part co-author of this amazing spread in the Sunday Times today is the contributing editor of the Sunday Times, Jim Armitage. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Jim, this is a really complicated case. There are many moving parts and there's lots of players and it seems lots of things going on. And I wonder, was this flawed from the very start?
Yeah, lots of things going on and lots of things going wrong on behalf of the claimants. It is completely baffling as to why this case came to court, to be honest, because the prime witness who was speaking on behalf of the claimants completely U-turned on his evidence years before the trial came to court and declared that the Daily Mail had done nothing wrong. He claimed that the witness statement that the claimants had got him to write was forged, yet this whole thing still came to trial. And lo and behold, the judge on Tuesday found against the claimants on every single one of the cases, on more than 50 articles that they claimed were obtained through hacking and other nefarious manners.
It seems remarkable. From reading your piece, Jim, the judge was really dismissive, just saying there was no real grounds for evidence here. So it begs the question, just as you said, why did this come to the courts in the very first place if it was so tenuously held? And is this about lawyers perhaps taking the case on because it's so high profile and inevitably will make a lot of money?
Well, without wishing to editorialise too much, my suspicion is that the lawyers had so much success in persuading newspaper groups to settle out of court that they just figured they'd kind of bluff, and that Associated would end up making... Associated, that's the owner of the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday, would settle out of court, pay them a big bundle of money, and they'd go away. In fact, in our reporting today, we reveal that right up until the last minute, the defendant's barrister, David Sherborne, was trying to persuade Associated to settle for up to £5 million and avoid going to court. But Associated were just taking the view, look, there's no evidence here. We're not going to do that. Why should we pay you any compensation? See you in court. And
what could this cost the likes of Harry and those other people in his group who have been part of taking this to court?
Yeah, well, almost as big a story as the judgment last week is going to be the second case, which will be about the money. The judge has quite unusually set aside 2 days of argument about what the cost should be, beginning on the 29th of July this month. So Associated says the whole case has cost about £50 million. Wow. And their own share of that is over half of it. They had very expensive barristers, very expensive legal team defending them against this. And you know, in the demands for disclosure, you know, before a case, the claimants can demand disclosure from the other side of all of the emails and paperwork and documents. And so we're talking about news stories that occurred 20 plus years ago. So Associated had to dig out emails and paperwork going back all of those years. It cost millions and millions of pounds. Now, the judge had actually capped what Associated could spend on the trial at about $4.5 million just before the trial began. But Associated, we're reliably informed, is going to push for way more than that, because you can demand exemplary damages if you can prove to the judge that the case against you was completely frivolous and should never have was badly conducted in the court, which I think is what Associated is going to do to get more money out of the celebs than the $4.5 million.
Right. And you spoke with Star Witness private investigator Gavin Burrows after the case, Jim. What did he tell you?
He basically said, I mean, he's such an unreliable witness. I mean, as a conversation, it was rambling and, uncertain. He sort of stumbles over things. But the one thing that he said again and again was this should never have come to court. This was a sham. He described it as the biggest media sham case in history. And he described the judgment from the judge as being excellent. This was the right call he made. But as I said again and again, I mean, Burrows should never have been in a witness stand. He's a completely unreliable witness.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, it's really quite fascinating, and there's so much more to ask you, Jim, but alas, we'll run out of time. But there's, of course, as I said, there's a 2-page spread and some in the Sunday Times today, which is really fascinating to read, just detailing more of the twists and turns of this. Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, criticism and introspection by journalists and demands for further curbs on the press are all pretty commonplace. But perhaps this week has been seminal in relations between the press and the people it writes about and the actions which are taken to get news. The Sunday Times Insight team's investigation into donations to Reform and Nigel Farage have seen the politician call a by-election, and Associated Newspapers, meanwhile, the publishers of the Mail and the Mail on Sunday, won a significant court case against Prince Harry and some others on all 97 counts, raising the possibility of a bill to be paid of some £50 million in legal costs. Well, here to talk about that is Dominic Ponsford, the editor of the Press Gazette. Hello to you.
Hello, Adam.
How much do you think this Prince Harry and others' judgment, how much impact do you think it's going to have on the mood of the media, which perhaps has felt rather beleaguered?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to underestimate how significant this was and how sort of cataclysmic a defeat it was for Prince Harry. So, I think it's a big boost. If he'd won, I mean, this probably could have destroyed the Daily Mail. That's not over-egging it, because the allegations he made were so outrageously serious, sort of systematic hacking, phone tapping, bugging, bribery, perjury, you name it. So it was kind of a fight to the death, really, between Harry and others and the Mail. So the Mail survives. Harry and the lawyers involved, I think, are very diminished by this. And the sort of campaigners who were driving this were very keen to have tougher regulation of the press. I mean, that was the agenda that was driving all this. And that appears to have been kicked into touch, which I think people within the press would say is a good thing, because it's already very, very hard to get these stories out, like the Sunday Times story you talked about. It's very hard, yeah.
I mean, that Sunday Times story, in a sense, is quite shocking. I mean, suggesting that the lead lawyers were very actively involved in trying to recruit people to bring the case, including Doreen Lawrence, the mother of Stephen Lawrence, who may even have been misled about the strength of her case.
Well, I mean, there was real dodginess involved in all this, and I think, Prince Harry's got off fairly lightly so far, but this is a real scandal in terms of what was involved. So the evidence that the case relied on was obtained with the help of a lot of money. So that's not in doubt. Witnesses were paid. These private detectives who gave evidence against the Mail were paid tens of thousands of pounds in some cases. And then Doreen Lawrence was Prince Harry, as the Sunday Times reports, he helped persuade her to get involved on the back of this, sketchily obtained evidence. So, I feel sorry for her, because she believed the lawyers and she believed Prince Harry, and maybe, why shouldn't she? But it was very, very bad judgment on his part to have done this, and it's and for him now, after the case, to condemn the judgment as a whitewash is sort of Trumpian almost, isn't it, in a kind of inability to accept facts and the plain truth.
Where do you think this leaves the campaign for further regulation of the press? We do know, for example, that two of the kind of leading lights have hacked off. Hugh Grant and Steve Coogan went to Makerfield to campaign for Andy Burnham. So is there a concern that the incoming Labour administration may still be interested in this?
Well, there's definitely some concern there. Andy Burnham has previously indicated he's in favour of Leveson 2, so continuing the Leveson inquiry into hacking. But I think this case really, makes that very hard for him to do. I think Hacked Off, who were an extremely successful pressure group back in the day, are very discredited by this because of their involvement in this case, in this campaign. They did exactly what they condemn, right? They didn't let the facts get in the way of a good story. They didn't let the facts get in the way of their agenda. It's utter hypocrisy. And I would think Andy Burnham will steer very well clear of them if he's got any sense. And I think most people today would admit that the press did very bad things, particularly the hacking scandal. But today, a much, much more pressing worry is social media. It's such a powerful, almost completely unregulated media. That's the regulation battleground of today, not the press, who are much, much better behaved nowadays than they were, in the 2000s when the news of the world, was doing some, very bad things.
And just finally, we're also getting a lot of hostility being directed at the press, the Times, the Sunday Times, and Sky News and others, very, very aggressively from Reform UK and Nigel Farage now. What do you make of that?
Yeah, they did have the temerity to report true things, which he's done, facts, uncomfortable facts, and some people, really don't like that, do they? But that's kind of what we've got to cherish. And I think that's one of the reasons why, journalists are so happy this week, because this was just honest reporting, wasn't it? It was the Sunday Times wasn't doing anything other than presenting facts, uncomfortable facts to the public, which, then Nigel Farage has, responded by attacking the press, which is... that's quite a common sort of Trumpian playbook. But this was just good journalism, wasn't it? And it's there's a whole panoply of legal recourse to him if anything was untrue or if it breached his privacy. But he's not going anywhere near that. He's just sort of attacking the player rather than the ball, if you like.
Dominic Ponsford of the Press Gazette, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And you can see those stories in today's Sunday Times in the paper and, of course, online, looking at the campaign, really, to take on the Daily Mail, and also further reports about undeclared support received by Nigel Farage.